You know, a little context never hurt anybody. So, full disclosure, I actually made this video a couple months ago. It was for a program that ended up getting canceled. As such, this video is a little different from the usual. The topic was chosen for me, and deals with issues outside of the stratosphere. There are also slight differences in the soundtrack and overall tone, but this is still very much a baseball vids video, and I hope you enjoy it and leave feedback. Let's go!
Baseball may have started as America's pastime, but as its popularity plateaus domestically, it's becoming more and more clear that the future of the game will be shaped abroad. If you asked someone to name the most popular American athletes, you'd probably hear about a bevy of players from the NBA and NFL. LeBron James, Tom Brady, James Harden, Odell Beckham, Steph Curry. Another name that might come to mind would be Tiger Woods. The point is that it might take a while before you get to Mike Trout. There's no denying that baseball has an image problem with younger people. At its core, the game is played at a relaxed pace in comparison to the other three major team sports in North America. It also relies on a code of conduct that some see as archaic, the unwritten rules. Taking the time to admire one's home run is likely to lead to confrontation with the opposing pitcher, whereas other moments of individual athletic brilliance, like a monster slam dunk, are used by athletes to pump up both the crowd and themselves. There are other economic forces at play that we'll get to later, but all these factor into a staggering decline in youth baseball participation in the 21st century. This is particularly shocking for a sport that is so woven into the very social fabric of the country itself. Thankfully, the game is doing great around the world. Major League Baseball having a large amount of international talent isn't a particularly new trend, but the game's future superstars are shaping up to be more foreign-born than ever before. Meanwhile, the MLB is considering adding a second team in Canada or a first team in Mexico. Also exciting is the amount of progress being made in developing foreign baseball leagues, as American-born players are being afforded new opportunities to pursue playing careers abroad. The end result is the globalization of an American pastime, and I think we should begin by paying homage to a few individuals who set this in motion. Baseball has a long and storied history in Latin America, beginning with the introduction of the game to Cuba. This is Nemesio Gio, a Cuban who studied at Spring Hill College in Mobile, Alabama. After learning the game, he brought a baseball back to his homeland in 1864 and formed Cuba's first team, the Habana Baseball Club. The sport was introduced to Japan just a few years later as American Horace Wilson, an English professor in Tokyo, organized the first Japanese team in 1878. Later in the 19th century, Hall of Famer player and entrepreneur Albert Spalding orchestrated baseball's first world tour. From 1888 to 1889, he and a group of major leaguers made stops in Hawaii, New Zealand, Australia, Egypt, Italy, France, and England. It would take decades for these seeds of baseball to truly blossom, but when they did, the results were felt all across the major leagues. In 1951, just 4 years after Jackie Robinson broke through baseball's color barrier, Minnie Minoso became the first black Cuban in the big leagues and one of the first Latin players to participate in the All-Star game. He was a wildly popular player, and his success in turn opened the door for another Latin great, Roberto Clemente. Minoso was a great player, but Clemente's run with the Pirates was absolutely dominant, making 15 All-Star games, winning 12 Gold Glove awards in right field, and racking up 3,000 hits before his tragic passing in a plane crash while delivering aid to earthquake victims in Nicaragua. The Baseball Writers Association of America then waived the usual 5-year waiting period and elected Clemente to the Hall of Fame. His induction in 1973 made him the first Latino player in Cooperstown, and his legacy lives on today through the Roberto Clemente Award, an award given to the MLB player who best exemplifies the game of baseball, sportsmanship, community involvement, and the individual's contribution to his team. In the last few decades, a tidal wave of international baseball talent has come ashore and dominated the big leagues. Mexican hurler Fernando Valenzuela's 1980 Cy Young campaign brought Fernando Mania to Los Angeles. Japanese pitcher Hideo Nomo brought that same energy 15 years later. Ichiro Suzuki made his major league debut in 2001 and grabbed a batting crown, Rookie of the Year, and MVP on a Mariners squad that won 116 games. In 2004, he broke baseball's record for hits in a season, a mark that stood for a whopping 84 years. Once eligible, he'll become the first Asian ball player enshrined in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. The achievements of foreign-born players have continued into the present day as well. In 2017, 129 years after Albert Spalding brought his barnstorming tour to Africa, infielder Gift Ngoepe became the first native continental African in the big leagues. As you can imagine, This influx of baseball players from all over the globe has caused quite the demographic shift in the majors. Let's talk about it. On opening day each of the last 3 seasons, the number of foreign-born players on active 25-man rosters or the disabled list has hovered around 250, or just under 30%. One of the more impressive feats of diversity in terms of nationality came from the opening day lineup of the 2019 Minnesota Twins. Their second baseman, third baseman, shortstop, left fielder, right fielder, designated hitter, and starting pitcher were all born outside of the continental United States. They would go on to defeat their division rivals, the Cleveland Indians, to kick off their exciting 2019 campaign. If you were to rewind the clock a generation prior, to the 1989 season, the opening day lineups of the Rangers, Blue Jays, Padres, and Cardinals would have stood out as being very international. They each featured at least 3 players from outside of the continental United States. The areas represented are traditional baseball powerhouses like Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. However, the 2019 Minnesota Twins had to dig deeper to uncover their talent. Jonathan Schoop is from Curacao, Marwin Gonzalez is from Venezuela, and Max Kepler is from Germany of all places. Another recent trend in the game is foreign-born top prospects. In 2017, the 2 biggest prospects in baseball were American Andrew Benintendi and Cuban Yoan Moncada. In 2018, it was Venezuela's Ronald Acuna Jr. and Japan's Shohei Ohtani. To kick off 2019, it was Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who is Dominican by heritage and holds Canadian citizenship, alongside Dominican shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. That's a lot of countries represented for a list of 6 future superstars. But as the tide of young international talent continues to grow, one also can't ignore the decline of youth baseball in the United States. A study by the National Sporting Goods Association determined that 8.8 million children between the ages of 7 and 17 played baseball in 2000. By 2013, that number had declined to only 5.3 million. That decline has often been at the expense of Black Americans. Critics of youth baseball have noted that expensive travel teams have created a barrier around what was once an open game. Families need to invest both wealth and time in order for their children to be seen by teams. And while these problems are hardly unique to the game of baseball, they still heavily affect the development of the sport. For low-income Black households, those demands are often impossible to fulfill. To the MLB's credit, they have made some efforts to rectify this. They founded Compton, California's Urban Youth Academy in 2006, and the program has already aided the development of potential stars like Hunter Greene, who was drafted 2nd overall by the Cincinnati Reds in 2017. Still, there's only so many roster spots in Major League Baseball, and the rapid growth of Latin-born athletes has coincided with the sharp decline in American Black ball players. This is a shocking outcome for a sport with a rich history of Black participation, dating back to the stars of the Negro Leagues like Josh Gibson, the breaking of the color barrier with Jackie Robinson, and the continued success of Black ball players in the majors like Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Rickey Henderson, Barry Bonds, and Ken Griffey Jr. We have talked about some of the shortcomings in the system that hindered the development of American Major League talent, but equally important is the progress made elsewhere in the world. Mexico, Korea, and Cuba all have skilled and highly developed top-level leagues, and you'd also be surprised by the level of competition in Australia's ABL and the Netherlands' Honkbal. There's no doubt that the top dog is currently Japan's NPB. In terms of difficulty, it is generally viewed as somewhere between AAA, the highest level in the minors, and Major League Baseball. The NPB has given plenty of future MLB talent their start in pro ball, most recently the Angels' Shohei Ohtani and the Mariners' Yusei Kikuchi. But it has also produced legends of its own. Sadaharu Oh is Japan's home run king, having hit a world record 868 home runs in 22 professional seasons. He also managed Japan in the inaugural World Baseball Classic, leading them to the championship. Through 4 iterations of the competition, the United States has only won it once, with powerhouses like Japan, the Dominican Republic, South Korea, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Venezuela always fielding strong and competitive teams. With the persistent growth of baseball globally, it shouldn't be a surprise that American players are pursuing careers overseas. Miles Michaelis was a failed big leaguer who pitched for the NPB's legendary Yomiuri Giants for 3 years. After that, he signed a contract with the St. Louis Cardinals, won 18 games, nabbed an All-Star appearance, and finished 4th in Cy Young voting upon his return to Major League Baseball. Eric Thames is another player who rehabilitated his career abroad, this time in Korea's slugger-friendly KBO. After 3 seasons abroad, he signed a contract with the Milwaukee Brewers and hit 31 home runs in 138 games. So, it goes without saying that Korea's KBO and Japan's NPB have a strong number of American-born baseballers currently playing abroad. Dennis Sarfate is an American closing pitcher who has become the NPB's version of Mariano Rivera. Meanwhile, in the KBO, 21 of 30 roster spots for foreign players were occupied by Americans to start the 2019 season. And while those guys wouldn't exactly be MLB superstars, they found playing careers that can pay up to $2 million United States dollars per year. KBO and NPB teams are also doing very well in the attendance department. In 2018, the New York Yankees were neck and neck with the Yomiuri Giants, who are considered Japan's version of the Bronx Bombers. The most attended KBO team, the Doosan Bears, averaged more fans per home game than the sparsely attended Tampa Bay Rays. The high level of competition in foreign baseball leagues was always going to interest American ballplayers with fringe MLB talent, but in 2019, a Japanese team was able to lure a top draft prospect overseas. Carter Stewart was a Florida high school pitcher who was selected by the Atlanta Braves 8th overall in the 2018 MLB draft. After some questions about his health significantly dropped his signing bonus offer, he elected not to sign and pitch a year in junior college instead. Coming into 2019, he was projected to be a late first or early second round pick, but teams didn't get the chance to pick him. On May 21st, just a few weeks before the draft, it was announced that Carter Stewart was signing a 6-year, $7 million deal with the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks of Japan's NPB. This is more guaranteed money than he would have gotten as a draft signing bonus, and it allows him to become a free agent at age 25, right when he could be entering his peak as a player. Depending on how he pitches in Japan, this could open him up to a lucrative MLB deal, but he also may just decide to stay. The globalization of baseball has brought plenty of opportunities to players from all over the world, but now it's time to talk about what the future holds for international players in general. With the politics of the current administration, baseball's looming labor disputes, and the prospect of an international player draft, there will be many interesting discussions in the next few years. Baseball's minor league systems are currently crawling with Latin minor league talent. The Midwest League, which plays at the Class A level, had 31 teenagers step into the batter's box 100 plus times in 2018. 17 of them, about 55%, were Latino international free agents. Could this be the first steps towards the end of the white American-born majority in Major League Baseball? There are external forces at work that will affect these young prospects, though. When MLB's collective bargaining agreement expires in December of 2021, there will be a myriad of labor issues discussed between players and owners. Players in the majors are likely to focus on issues that are affecting them the most, particularly years of team control, arbitration, and a free agency market that has been very slow the past couple off seasons. It's not clear whether the MLBPA will go to bat for minor leaguers who are mostly making between $1,000 and $2,000 per month, and that's only for during the season. Latino players in particular are susceptible to predatory behavior on the part of both agents and owners. Playing Major League Baseball is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for ball players from poorer, less stable countries, but it's also a minefield for potential danger. If a foreign player can't land a large signing bonus as a teenager, they'll have to make their way through the rough-and-tumble minor league system with very little earnings, but also have to adjust to the language barrier and culture shock that comes with working abroad. The agent that signed them may be taking a much bigger cut of the pay than domestic ball players, and if they do reach the majors, owners will dangle below-market contract extensions over their heads in the hopes of getting a potential superstar locked up for cheap. For Cuban ball players, the prospect of playing in the United States carries tremendous risk and sacrifice. In order to defect from Cuba, Yasiel Puig attempted to sneak into and establish residency in Mexico 13 times. The final plan was hatched in Miami with the help of a friend of Puig's and some wealthy benefactors. They paid Los Zetas, one of Mexico's most dangerous gangs, to smuggle Puig into the country. Yeah, to play Major League Baseball, Puig was held captive by a dangerous cartel until the money came through from Miami. When the Zetas upped the price of Puig's release, he had to be rescued from the smugglers. What did the Miami benefactors get for this investment? Allegedly, 20% of Puig's future earnings. A desperate decision from a talented ball player. In April of 2019, 7 years after Puig's harrowing escape, President Donald Trump blocked a historic agreement that would allow Cubans to play Major League Baseball without having to defect, and discussions are likely to continue for months and years to come. As baseball's popularity stagnates among American fans and athletes, the continued success of foreign-born ball players and foreign leagues will be relied on to grow the sport. There will also have to be systematic reform in the future. But until then, baseball fans will cross their fingers and hope that talent and ability will overcome all obstacles, so that the product on the field will remain strong, no matter who's playing.